and you can get a discount. And I think it's worth it. I use it a lot. So there you go.
I am fully expecting to see you on QVC very soon, Chris. That was amazing. They're going to be calling like we need Chris on the infomercial channel.
How have I got a deal for you? It's consulting.
It says I can crush procrastination, crush brain fog, and boost motivation and focus.
You can.
Who would say no to that? You had me click on our own link, so and now I'm curious. So I guess it works.
You can get a discount.
I get a discount?
That's right. All right. I don't know what the hell we were talking about.
Clarity of focus, the ability to think of a mental thread, keep it through.
Which I clearly don't have right now because I haven't had my magic mind this morning. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Consultants Saying Things. I'm Chris Lockhart, and I have Phil Yanoff, and I have Oliver Kronk with me today. Hi, guys. Glad to see you.
Hey, man.
As you know, I spend sometimes, in the middle of the night in the bowels of the internet, out on the Reddit boards, primarily. And I was looking through Reddit the other day in the consulting subreddit. And there was a post out there, and it was a question posed by this person. And this person is a management consultant, and they're about to make the jump from senior associate level type to a manager type role. And what they're becoming aware of, right, is increasingly soon they will be judged in their performance based on how much they begin to sell, right? And that, of course, increases as you move up the scale in consulting. And one of the things that this person sort of was pondering and asking openly was, how do I haven't had much opportunity to create relationships with folks up until now. How do I begin to do that? And how do I begin to find buyers and pitch to them and basically make those sales? And I think that's an interesting thing, right? We've talked lots of times about ways to engage with new clients and things like that. But this one was sort of like a little different because this person is a consultant. They know consulting. They've seen other people sell, and now they're going to soon become responsible for selling. So I thought this was a sort of an interesting topic to begin talking about because I know we've kind of been there and been through it. So, winning new business. I mean, Phil, this person, you've frequently said, right, the time you need a network is not the time to begin building the network, right? By that time, it's too late, right? And this person, maybe they have a network, but maybe those people aren't buyers. What do we think about where this person's at right now?
Well, I mean, I think anybody can find themselves in this spot or maybe want to. I mean, some people just naturally, I don't want to be in that spot. I just want to do what I do. But some folks are saying, look, I would like to make that transition where I could build some relationships. I could help identify new business. As I said to you earlier, when you proposed the topic, I love the fact that someone has the impulse to feed the beast, right? Someone is going to bring stuff in because, by the way, killing it is what lets us eat it, right? And I'm bringing it across the transom, right? Finding that new business, that kind of thing. That's that bit. So to your point, I want to say there's always opportunity to build relationships, and we kind of have to start it. But I'm going to say that I think for most consultants who are in this spot, this is the catbird seat. You're already getting a check. And now you can go out and start working on the business development side of this component of it and maybe get recognized and have an opportunity to develop more and maybe move your way up through the ranks. So I think this is great. And I think, our thinking about this is all we have to do is start asking different people better questions, and we can find opportunities that let us get able to do this.
Yeah, that's interesting. Oliver, I mean, we both worked in large consultancies, right? If you're an analyst or an associate, like what's the likelihood that you're going to be exposed to people where you can ask good questions, right, of folks and begin to develop that relationship?
Yeah, I think it's if you're lucky, then maybe you come across something like that. But I think in reality, there's a couple of ways this tends to happen. Is that the partner or director that you're working for has already sort of identified that you've got selling potential and kind of knocks you a softball and says, "Hey, I had a chat with someone and I happen to know they've got this challenge over there. Why don't you go and have a chat? Go and take this guy out for coffee or a drink or something and chat to him about this thing. I think you might find there's a opportunity for you to bring some business in for the firm over there." I think that's one way where and then you're coached into that sort of journey, and you're also shown, because quite often in these large management consultancies, the selling process itself is pretty complicated. Like, it's one thing actually landing the business, but then it's like getting it through all the bureaucracy and the compliance checks and ethical checks and various other things, and getting it into the systems tends to be quite a challenge as well. So there's, I think, being coached and mentored, and this is where Phil's point about the network, you need to have built the internal network to have people kind of believe in you and go, yeah, Chris, he's worth a shot at like kind of securing some add-on business. So I'm gonna let him run at this one. That's certainly one way I think this happens. The other way is that you go out of your way to go to meetups or go to networking opportunities, or
like classic sales stuff.
Yeah, you go through a classic sales route, and you're at a conference, or you happen to have a friend or someone in the family has something that you're able to,
a little nepetism, right? That sort of thing. Yeah.
Or just
refer to the one we did on ethics.
So I don't necessarily mean that someone just gives you a shoe in. It's more that you find some other random way that you uncover an opportunity through your own personal network. And then, there's a little bit of belief. There's already a relationship there, because people, the line I guess I'll use maybe throughout this is that people buy people, and that's right. Super true in consulting, right? Because it's a people business.
I completely agree with you. And this is interesting, right? Because in this particular case, right, we're not talking about someone, right, that has no network, because they've already made it from analyst 1 to analyst 2 to associate 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is. And senior associate, so they've probably been an engagement manager or something like that, and now they're moving to manager or director, whatever it is, right? The next level up. So they probably have that internal network, right? Because they've already made it this far. But now, I think, Phil, what you're pointing out is this is now the shift from like, I'm delivering work as a consultant to now I if I'm not already, I need to start speaking and thinking like more of the trusted advisor to somebody who is then going to, want to buy stuff from me, right? Or is open to hearing solutions from me. Right?
Yeah. And I think that, being naturally curious and asking, trying to figure out where they're headed and what they're up to, what are their goals, what are their concerns about where they're headed. I think those are all things that we can do, even if we weren't yet in a sales role, right? It's like, all right, hey, I know we're working on this new project to roll out X, and I think I understand why this is important, but talk to me about that. And then that's where you can ask these other questions as well, as like, what is your concern in this space right now? What are you guys working, or what are you working on that we ought to be helping you with? And I think that's how you open this up.
That's exercising your consulting muscles, right? Because you're taught, especially as a management consultant, like when you're doing these discovery interviews and things like that, you have to be probing, you have to be analytical, you have to be asking good questions at that point. So now all you're doing is taking it up a level, right? You're asking sort of broader questions about problem areas and whatnot. And I think that's probably how you begin to build trust, right, between you and a potential buyer. I guess the question is, what if we've always talked about like, you can take a course and you can get a skill, and I'm getting a sense like this is not entirely learned skill kind of thing, right? That there's kind of have to be good at interacting with people, don't you? The EQ bit.
Well,
that a lot.
I think it's EQ. I guess what I think it is in fact a skill. But we have to train ourselves to be aware of what might these opportunities be, and to ask. we just typically ask bad questions. We're just, and I know we always keep coming back to that piece, but the thing is, we rarely do people think of, let me get under really what someone's goals might be. Let's get at an emotional level with their goals. Let's figure out what's really, how it impacts them that this either doesn't work or isn't working yet or something like that. But anyway, getting to deep questions, this is something that not everybody does. And like, I've never done this thing like you guys are talking about where you show in, you're in the consulting firm and you kind of work your way up. Where I've been is on the other side, where I was the customer. And eventually the firm comes up to me and goes, I just like the way you think. I like the questions you're asking. I like what's going on here. Is there some way we could get you to come do this with us? Right.
I like you and I like the way you think, Phil Yanoff.
Well, thank you. And I suspect that you only partly mean that, but that's okay. But I mean, I think it is super crazy. I mean, I had a guy walk up to me at an event, and this is about something else, but I had a guy walk up to me at someone else's event. I was standing, and he said, "Hey, I worked with you on something a year ago, and I just want to tell you, I like the way you think. I like the questions you ask." I'm like, I don't even remember this guy. I remember the meeting. I don't remember that guy at all. But he went out of his way to come seek me out at a meeting where I'm just sitting at a table talking. So I think that can be, being curious in these spaces and being able to ask deep questions and share and elicit information is a superpower.
That presupposes a bit of empathy, though, right? Is what we're kind of speaking to.
You have to develop it. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say, like, not every management consulting, maybe a little bit, but certainly technical consulting, you typically get engineers that are like really good.
I was going to come on to this. I think, I suppose I've been lucky in that, I as well as having an engineering background, I've always been a reasonable communicator, or I found communication easier, I think, than some of my peers.
I mean, you communicate in Legos, but I mean,
sometimes I'm a bit abstract like that. That's how I roll. But yeah, I had to kind of coach myself, and there's a cultural thing as well. So I guess there's not only the engineering piece here, but I guess I'll speak to some of the Britishness here as well, where we don't always feel that comfortable selling. Selling it's not like, I think, in the US, where the sales culture is far more just de facto. That's the perception I have anyway, as someone who's been to the States.
You're saying the British are above that sort of.
I'm not saying we're above it.
Low class sort of, yeah.
But we're just.
Here's the thing, to your point, Oliver. When I was doing sales training with people, one of the first things you do, one of the earliest sessions, is to get them over their own trash, their mental trash, over the fact that salespeople are people who are not to be trusted. I never trust a salesperson, right? And so, we would have salespeople showing up at a sales training event who hated salespeople. That's a terrible place to start from, right?
But also, I think there are different classes of selling as well, isn't there? There's cold calling and selling when someone doesn't really want to hear from you or buy your product, and then there is consultative selling, where actually what you're doing is, there's what we've already said. It's like asking smart questions. It's finding out how you can kind of move that conversation from exploratory to actually discovering something that could be an opportunity for your firm to help them. So this is the conversation I often have with a lot of peers and people that I kind of coach and mentor. Is it's not park the whole double glazing car salesman. It's not that. It's just a natural evolution of a conversation that you would have with a client to go, do you want to do some more business with us? But obviously you kind of don't quite put it like that. But that's essentially what it is. It's just kind of building on that relationship and saying, hey, we've done some great stuff for you here. You're clearly, you've told us you're happy with our work. So what other problems could we help you with? It's kind of like, kind of looking for that adjacent opportunity, because I think particularly for us, we're finding that it's clearly a lot easier, particularly in current economic market, to win more business from existing clients where we've already got a track record, where we deliver for them and they trust us, than it is to try and kind of build new relationships. Although I do quite a bit of that as well, but that is certainly a lot harder. But yeah, to your point, Chris, about the sort of engineering, possibly slightly, and this again, lots of stereotypes here, slightly introverted, awkward, looking at shoes. I mean, someone gave me a great joke the other day. How can you spot the extroverted technologist? And they said they look at your shoes while talking to you. I thought that was a great one. But anyway, there is very much a journey I think you've got to go on, which is, and we've talked about this before in previous episodes, I'm sure, around kind of being the subject matter in your domain, the expert in your domain, and then kind of recognizing that there's more than just delivery. There's as you grow as a consultant, you've got to grow some other muscles in other directions.
But I mean, you've already pointed it out, right? And I think we all know this. Anyone who's done any sales training knows it's easier to sell business to existing customers and keep existing customers than it is to acquire new ones. But that's in part because you've demonstrated some expertise, right?
Yep.
You've done something of value and delivered that thing of value to that customer client, and so they begin to trust you. Oh, I know that Oliver can build the best Lego Le Mans car, right? That there is, right? So I'm gonna go with that. But in the case of, like, in this particular person's case, they don't have those relationships, or probably more to the point, they have relationships. They know how to create relationships. They wouldn't have gotten this far and been pegged for promotion if they didn't have those skills. But their relationships are with people that aren't buyers, right? Yeah. They're like the manager of the agile team doing blah, blah, blah. They're not the senior VP or the CIO they're not somebody with purchasing authority. Or if that person does have purchasing authority, it's like, 15 grand or whatever it is, right? And they can buy software, but not services.
Sometimes this stuff takes patience, right? Like, I think I get frustrated when I hear people saying, oh, you need to elevate the conversation. You need to go and seek out the C-level person. And it's like, no, you've got to build a journey to get to that purchasing person. Particularly if you're not at the senior level and can just swan in and say, hey, can I have a meeting with someone at the C-level? You've got to kind of build the route to get there. And this is where I think account planning is really, really overlooked.
Yeah, that's like, a really good point. Yeah.
How do I get from here, where I'm talking to some technologists, or maybe a head of engineering, or a head of analysts, or market desk, or whatever it is, depending on what sector consulting you're doing. How do I map from here, not feel like I'm going over the head of the person I'm working for, but like we're doing it together, and it's making them look good and us look good, to kind of elevate this conversation to the next level up. It's finding like some kind of win-win way of elevating the conversation and earning the right to get to that senior buyer. I think too often it's like, oh, right, I need to now kind of find a way of talking to the senior buyer directly. And it's like, well, no, work with the more junior people at the client to kind of get there and earn the right to be trusted in the room, because it's much better to have people vouching for you in that room than like, well, who the hell is this random guy that just pitched up and tried to sell me this 6-month engagement that I've got no real need for.
I will deliver you 200 slides for the low price of $1 million. But part of that is driven by the sales cycle. I have a performance review and I need to sell $2 million worth of work this year. I don't have time to develop a relationship with the manager of the team and his director and then work my way up to someone who's going to buy something, right? And I think also in management consulting, we sometimes are dealing with things that are a little more strategic in scope. Strategy isn't owned by the manager of the development team, right? The strategy is owned by more senior people that have the money and they're in charge of, direction and whatnot. So like, if you don't have those relationships, to your point, it could take years to build those relationships, but
it could, but that short-termist view of I don't have time is often where I see people tripping up, because then they do come across like the used car salesman, because they are just pitching up randomly and they haven't done their homework. They've not done discovery. They've not built the foundational relationships, and they'll end up potentially having the door slammed in their face, which is then a far harder position to recover from than if you do the hard yards. But I agree, sometimes this stuff takes time.
So like, and in this, Phil, right? Like, this person is saying like, I don't understand how these relationships are built aside from working together occasionally or simply being friends prior. What are some ways? I mean, because we've talked a lot in the past about networking and building those relationships and that sort of thing, but that's often from like scratch with a longer term plan. This guy's in it, right? He's in the thick of it. How does he transition? What are some tools, or what are some ways, I guess, that we can give folks in this position to begin to recognize who the person is that they need to build that relationship with and how they do it? Because I mean, there's LinkedIn, obviously, right? But like, you don't want to be like posting a bunch of shit on that guy's timeline every day and annoying the hell out of him, right? It's how do we do that?
Well, I mean, we're talking about someone who's actually inside an account already, right? And by the way, that's got to be the easiest work, right? The easiest person to get to
That'll be my comment. This is the easiest answer. I'll just put that on there. You're in the easiest position. Phil Yanoff says that,
here's what I'm saying. Here's what I'm saying. If you're in an account, I mean, the best place to go get someone to stroke you a check is someone who stroked you a check in the past, right? So that's someone that you're already doing business with. He's in a great spot, and anybody like this, anybody who is already at the performative level is in a great spot because they're already talking to somebody who's using that, right? And you can ask about, all right, what is it that's coming next, or what are the adjacent problems, or how does this, what are you working on elsewhere that is also a thing that we might, that might be able to help you with. So I think it's all of those pieces. And it's like, well, we're doing this. And it's like, to me, the perfect follow-up question inside this internal networking is, okay, who makes that decision? Who says yes to that? Who gets to say yes to that, right? Where does that happen? And they could tell you. And then you can figure out, is this the right person to introduce you? Can they facilitate an introduction for you? But I just think once you've built trust with someone, then it's just easy to move from level to level in that space.
That's some of that account planning, right? Oliver, that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Buyer map and like all this sort of stuff.
But the other thing that's occurred to me is this is also, it goes the other way to what I described earlier, where the partner will throw you something. It might be that you sniff out something and you go, right, that's a C-level conversation that I'm not at the right pay grade yet to have. But I've gathered the insight that is potentially a problem, a customer client problem that could be solved by us. I'll now take this to my director or partner and say, hey, I found this. And certainly in the UK, we have this concept of sales attribution. So you don't always have to directly sell. So there's almost like two parts of your scorecard. It's like
it's your opportunity. You're just not executing the sale, right?
So you can kind of get sales, you can claim a credit against that sale. So it's often like, I feel other people maybe feel like they have to do the whole sales cycle themselves. It's a team sport. So like if actually a director or a partner that already maybe has a relationship would be the best person to actually sell that piece of work, you make sure you get the attribution for it, and you prepare, and you do a good discovery, and you do a good briefing to the director or partner, and they're going to go, wow, that Chris guy, he was great. I only uncovered the opportunity. He gave me a great briefing that told me the right talking points to go and have the conversation with the CFO that then landed us that piece of work. So that's a win-win, right? Because you're not only winning the business, you're also impressing the people that are likely to be approving your next promotion as well.
Right. And I think that's an opportunity for the more technically developed people, right, that came out of engineering or the sort of thing, because they're probably, if you're working with someone implementing a platform or something at some wherever, you're going to have insight into pain points and problems and directions and other things. And you're witnessing, hey, your DevOps organization is really, really weak in these areas. That might be an opportunity. And oh, by the way, the people at your level that you're working with probably also see that as a problem. So now you've got you've co-opted those people right into your perspective, and you can raise that up, even though you're not presenting it necessarily to the CIO. You can raise that internally through your network. And oh, by the way, there's another piece of this, which, certainly maybe not in the smaller firms, or not at boutique firms, but in the large firms, it's not all about what you know, right? So I don't know anything about Salesforce. That's not true. I know something, but I don't know anything about Salesforce, but like I know the Salesforce team. I know we have a Salesforce team. Is there a Salesforce opportunity that I can bring in, even though I personally don't know? Let me get that guy from that team. Hey, this is what my client is saying. What is this? Does this make? Oh yeah. Now, and then you can begin to develop like, here is an opportunity, right? So it is an ongoing networking exercise, right? I mean, it's kind of interesting. So that's it. Consulting is just asking the right questions and having a good network and having empathy and having Wendy Keen. Maybe that's the other part that you need.
She knows people.
She knows people.
But I think this comes back to talking about the Wendy Keens of this world. That's not quite the space we're talking about right now. We're talking about someone who's on that career journey. But clearly this gets a lot easier once you build eminence and you build establish credibility in your field, and you're invited to go to conferences like Wendy is, and then sort of things, kind of come far more naturally. But I guess it's also planning for how you get there as well yourself. Like it's one thing directly sourcing opportunities. It's another being able to kind of get into situations that will open doors for you, that will lead to future opportunities. It's kind of like, you've got to be thinking about the short, medium, and longer term sort of plan, I think, as a consultant.
Yeah, and I think part of that is like some of that thought leadership, right? Like using social media to put some of your ideas out there, or comment on other people's ideas, or demonstrate, love the word eminence, demonstrate some of that, as you develop, and have a little gravitas, and like what you're saying carries some weight or some authority or something based on your knowledge and experience and expertise. But you can't let that atrophy, right? I think that's what we're saying. You can't let that atrophy.
And the trick there is distilling from your work. What are the key sort of learning points, or what are the really interesting nuggets? Because there's obviously a lot of consulting work that's not going to be interesting to people outside that organization.
Oh, come on. Everything in consulting is awesome.
But it's navigating the fine line of something that's sort of highly proprietary, lots of intellectual property maybe, or unique ideas that you're working on for the client. It's kind of how do you make something generic and you're not going to get in hot water for? Because unfortunately, particularly in the big firms, we probably touched on this on the social media episode, you can get in trouble if you maybe name things a bit too clearly and make it obvious who you're talking about. But it's more distilling the ideas and the concepts and the unique angles and approaches that others might be interested in hearing about. That, and that's as much of a skill as talking or writing well. It's spotting the topics that are of interest and relevance to talk about on social media or talk about at a conference.
Do you guys think it's enough to I like electric vehicles, and I follow a lot of automotive consultants and worked with some of them in the past and whatnot. And I've done some automotive work myself, but is it enough? I'm not an expert on EVs, right? And the EV market, but I comment on things and I post some things. Is it enough to do it at that level, or do you really need to sort of focus in on your thing and develop sort of unique perspective? In other words, do you risk like just being sort of like I agree with that kind of guy, right? Versus like, I have a unique perspective on this. I mean, I don't know.
So isn't it a question for you? Yeah. You said, I comment on EVs. Does that ever lead you to conversations that
it has
actually the next stage?
It has, but I'm not, I'm not looking to develop my own personal business in that direction, right? That's a kind of an interest kind of thing. I could see though, where the conversations that I have had with folks, you could take that to the next level.
Yeah. Right? I think there's a couple of things here. One is,
I love that, Phil, how you turned that back on me. That was
if you've identified there is someone that you'd like to do business with, but you don't right now, one of the things you can do is obviously go and comment on their posts and make them feel loved and appreciated, and sort of talk to them about their stuff, because that's one way of building a relationship with someone that you don't know through online channels. But I think that's one route. I think the other route is, yes, you're going to need original thoughts, you're going to need original material. So it's almost like, are you projecting, or are you responding? So like if you're in response mode, then it's enough to strike up some comments and then move that to DMs and maybe set up a coffee meeting or whatever. That's fine if you've identified who you want to talk to already. But if you haven't identified who you want to talk to and you want to kind of get new inbound sort of, or raise your profile, you're going to need to create that ideally original content, and push that out there and be bold and have a message, and maybe be a little bit controversial, because obviously not being clickbaity and not being dishonest, but like having an angle that's gonna generate a discussion is key, right?
Well, Phil, I think where you were going is
engagement.
Yeah, no, that's right. You were asking the question. Are the things you are saying engaging other people in a conversation that leads to something, which I think means that you've got to have some sort of plan or goal or objective, right? It's not.
Well, the thing is, if you're all over the place, right? The thing, most people do not have a very big slot in their memory bank for you, Chris Lockhart, right? Or for me, Phil Yanov, right? They just don't. And so the thing is, if if they see us talking about a thing, and they're like, okay, that's kind of cool, like around this habit of consultants saying things or being successful in the consulting space or whatever. So people have a slot for that. But if one week it's EVs and the next week it's gummy bears and the following week it's weed, which by the way is related to the gummy bears thing. But in all of that, I mean, no one knows how to follow you. And they're like, I don't know what to do with that. Right. And so, maybe you can build up enough trust that someone's just a fan of your potential thinking, but that just doesn't seem nearly as useful as saying, how about having a plan where I'm going to, in this space, here's the thing I think you need to know. Who is it you want to talk to? Now, one of my own planned podcast episodes, by the way, is an idea that I teach people all the time, and that's to have what they think of as their ideal avatars or what they think their customer avatars are. And they create a little profile of them that will fit on a Post-it note, and they stick these Post-it notes on the top of their monitor. And when they write or they post, when they put anything out in the world, they think, who am I trying to draw in this conversation? Who am I trying to engage? Is this the kind of thing that is going to bring this group in or this group or this group? And that way they know who they're writing for. I heard Seth Godin say this on a podcast just a couple of weeks ago. And he said, there's two Seth Godins. There's the me who some days is grumpy and some days is thinking about other and odd things. He said, and then there's the me who is the character that writes Seth Godin's blog. He said, and that person is on and they're on these topics. And I do that all the time. And he said, here's the thing. I don't let the real Seth Godin make blog posts. Only the character Seth Godin gets to make the blog posts. Now, you can decide if you want to be that or not, but I think that is a disciplined approach to building an audience. Who am I talking to? What am I talking about? What problems am I solving for them? Can I be consistent in that over time? I think that's useful.
And that's why I'm not very successful. I had some success, but I'm not as successful as Seth Godin because I am far more top of mind and sporadic and all over the place than that, right? And but that's kind of like I've
squirrel.
There's medicine for that.
Be a squirrel, and sometimes that works really, really well because I've happened to squirrel on some topic that's really of interest, and then other times it doesn't work well because I've not been consistent with putting out content and all that sort of good stuff. Sure. So I know, Chris, you're you're very good at like, right, I'm going to put out an episode every couple of weeks.
So all right, so no scattershot on LinkedIn. It sounds like it's like it's career planning. And we've talked about this before too, right? It's like, I want to achieve this. I want to become partner. And in order to do that, I need to have some area of expertise, right? I mean, I find it fascinating. Just over 20 years, you work with people and you're both associates at one point in time, and you never knew that they had any interest in any particular area. And then, now they're a partner at wherever, and suddenly they are the expert on like supply chain in public transportation companies or whatever. And it's like, I had no idea that you had any interest in that, but and maybe they didn't, but maybe they just saw like, hey, there is an opportunity here. The relationships that I currently have, yes, they're managers, but in 10 years, they'll be, senior VPs, and I'm going to cultivate that over time. In other words, it's like a long-term career plan. I'm not sure everyone has the patience for that though, right?
No, that's why, there are some people that boomerang.
What does that mean? People don't have the patience to be consistent or to actually attract their ideal client to them?
No, I don't think they do.
Okay.
No, do you know anyone from our generation? Because Oliver and I we're basically the same age. So, I mean, do you know anyone from our generation? Oliver, we're not the same age, but I thought that was no.
We're not far off, I don't think. But yeah. I think there's this culture of instant gratification, I guess I get bored easily, so I didn't have the patience to see it through. And I think also in tech it's a bit different, isn't it? Where you can jump around a little bit more and kind of get ahead by moving around. But I think if you're in a traditional management consulting role and you're prepared to stick it out, I've saw many people kind of progress, and I still see them on LinkedIn popping up with promotions to partner, and it's great. I congratulate them and so on, and it's great they had that focus and they had that commitment and staying power to go, do you know what, I've got a plan and I'm sticking to that plan. I think that requires quite a lot of self-belief that you're on that course, and that because it's very easy to go, oh, what the hell am I doing? I should just go into industry and do something different rather than stay on the plan. I think staying on the plan is very disciplined and courageous to do that. And I salute people that stick to that course.
Well, the person in the Reddit post, I mean, so they're becoming a manager, management consulting. They're probably in their late 20s, something like that, right? You know, that sort of time frame. So they're of the generation where, yeah, it's like I need my media consumption is 10 seconds of TikTok dances in like an endless scroll, like a attention span of a hummingbird. But even this person is saying, is there a network? Is there a business development cheat sheet I can use, right, to accelerate to get into this?
And do you know what's interesting is that when I was at the big firm, there was concerns in the sort of HR department and senior leadership that, like, is this model going to work going forwards? Because we're hearing feedback from people that they're not prepared to go. And also, what was really interesting is people are coming into the firm with ideas, and they're expecting to better monetize those ideas and get some kind of revenue share of those ideas immediately, rather than waiting to become a partner and then get a share of the profits. So I think the firms are being challenged in the kind of employee brand and employee kind of contract, as it were, not the official one, but like the way it works. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that survives, to your point.
Well, Phil, it's interesting now. I mean, this is sort of taking a different turn. It sounds like what we're saying is like if your objective is partner in a large firm, you got to put in the time. You got to put in time and consistency. And if that's not what you want to do, this is probably not the right firm for you. Maybe a different firm or a different type of consulting or something, right?
Yeah, I thought that people got into consulting because they liked solving complex problems for companies that have the resource to actually solve them, right? And some wherewithal to do it. So I think if you like that, if that's where your values are, then this ought to work for you. In terms of being consistent, I think it's continuing to show up. Typically, when people aren't consistent, something happened, right? Something about the job changed. They misaligned what they were doing. They didn't understand what the values of the organizations that they were going to be involved with were. And that kind of causes them to jink off path and something happens. And, if the values don't align, it might be somewhere else. But I think you got to know what's important to you. And that way you can, I mean, yeah, I think you should be able to ask yourself, listen, you don't know for sure what tomorrow holds, but the question you should be able to ask yourself is, if I were doing what I'm doing today in this trajectory 10 years from now, would I be happy with what I've accomplished? Would I be satisfied with my life? Am I headed in that direction, in a direction that I am proud of, is aligned with my values, or however, whatever test you're going to apply with it? Because I think if you're in your job right now thinking, man, I'm just here until someone offers me a bigger check, I'm not sure that's exactly the right answer to that question, right? And it can lead you into some places where you're deeply dissatisfied with your own body of work.
Well, I think that's why turnover at those large firms is in the tens of thousands, right, every year, because I think there's a lot of that. You go through business school and it's like, oh, I want the instant high paycheck. I'm going to ride this for 2 or 3 years. I'm going to leave and go do a startup or do instant gratification kind of. I think maybe you're right. Maybe that's not the right place to go. But on the flip side, I've seen people that have gotten to like the associate level kind of thing leave, and you think they're leaving because of that what we've just been talking about, but it turns out they've started their own thing and been very successful at it and have continued to grow. And now 10, 15 years later, they're the CEO of their company that is partnering with very large companies doing really large, important things. And I think you're absolutely right, Phil. We've talked about this too, right? Understand your values, what it is that you want to accomplish. And I love this idea of like, in 10 years, if I'm doing this, will I be happy? I think the corollary to that is, and what do I need to be doing now so that when I am there in 10 years, I've done the behaviors, right? And built up that stuff. I think that's fascinating. Right. Well, that's it then. So we've cracked it. We've cracked the case. We've cracked the code.
So, Chris, I think this is useful and it's important. And I think that, I'm glad that this Reddit question came up and we get to talk about this. The thing is, I think that if you ever think that you would like to have some business development capability, or, for example, you would just like to ensure that you are one of the most valuable members of the consultant teams, you should be sniffing out new work as part of what you do. Just being a little bit curious. Here's the neat thing about this, and Oliver pointed out something important at the front, right? None of us, in fact, almost nobody likes to sell. But most of us like to solve people's problems. And sometimes we can even solve the problems they've had trouble articulating if we ask good questions and are able to pull that out of them. So I like this idea. I like the impulse. I think all of us should be doing it. We should all be asking the kind of questions that helps us determine what future opportunities might look like.
So I love what Phil summarized there. And I think it's important to realize this is a step, it's a transition that will probably feel a little bit uncomfortable, particularly if you've been very sole contributor, sort of, delivering work, delivering engagements. It's a step up. It's a new set of muscles you need to grow. And I think don't be afraid to ask for support and help and coaching and guidance from the people you're working with, and also be creative. Like think outside of. You're only going to win stuff if you find a unique angle or a different opportunity or a different place to go and kind of identify leads and things. So yeah, kind of don't constrain yourself too much when you're thinking about this topic. Like think about conferences, or is it social content, or what? Just have an open mind when it comes to how you might go about winning work.
Yeah. And I think, one of the ways to do that, right, and I think we touched on this, is you don't always have to be the first name in the SOW, right? You don't have to be the one signing the SOW for the firm. Yep. You can identify opportunities, even at tactical levels in technical consulting. You can identify opportunities and you can elaborate those opportunities along with the people you're working with. And then you can raise those opportunities up through your chain to the people that the partner's having a conversation with. And if that's the CIO or whatever, well, now you've got some level of attribution for that idea and for that sale.
100%.
Unless you work at a firm where they got an asshole for a partner and they just cut you right out of that. But you have to learn. I'll cut that bit out. Anyway, I think it's a great topic. Okay. Well, listen, guys, I really appreciate your time. Oliver, I love the shirt, by the way. It's good stuff. If you guys want some of this merch that you're seeing, like I got this nice quarter zip. Oliver's got the t-shirt with the Shadow Man on the back there, the generic consultant Shadow Man. There's hoodies. The hoodie is good. We've got mugs. We've got all kinds of stuff, right? One thing I don't know that we've shown, this is possibly my favorite, Phil. I know you like this. This is the, ask good questions notebook.
Logbook. Yeah. Write them down. Get the answers, write them down.
When you're in a meeting and you work for a consulting firm and they didn't, give you a moleskin notebook or something like that, something nice, with a nice pen, you can get something equally nice from our merch store and take your notes in here as a consultant.
I loved watching you dig yourself out of that path, by the way, right there. It's like, they didn't give you something nice. Get this instead.
That's right. Yeah. It's just as good. That, by the way, the merch is available off the Consultants Saying Things website. So consultantsayingthings.com. And then over on the menu, it says merch, and you click the merch and you go. And we're going to try to, get some cool things. There's some beer glasses and stuff that other consultants like to do. But we'll continue to add some stuff out there, that people might be interested in. I love this one. I wore this to the Masters last week, so it was walked around with this thing on and got some questions. People were like, "What are you a consultant for?" And I'm like, "Well, that's a great question. Let me tell you about that."
Why do you ask?
Why do you ask?
I hope you ended up selling them a huge engagement off the back of that conversation.
No, I didn't. So anyway, listen, guys, I appreciate your time. And I think there's more to talk about on this. So thanks, everybody. If you're interested in hearing all of the stuff that was cut out of this hour and a half long recording session, you can sign up at patreon.com/consultant saying things. And you can, you see all of the episodes that we release freely. But then if you want to sign up and for a little scratch thrown our way, to help cover some of the administrative costs, you can see like all the behind the scenes stuff that we cut out. There's a lot more swearing usually. So there you go. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you all next time.
So Richard, I'm glad to have caught up with you.
Right.
We recorded something a year or so ago about using LinkedIn for success, and it was great for consultants saying things. But we had a recent sort of topic that we were discussing based on a post on Reddit, and this was really someone who is in a consulting firm already. So they know how the work works. They have the EQ. They're being promoted into a position where now they're going to sort of have a sales quota, right? And they haven't been making the buyer relationships. They haven't been making those connections over time. And so the question is, how do I develop those relationships now that I'm going to be part of my performance is going to be responsible for, generating revenue based off of these connections? And so I know we can use LinkedIn.
We can use LinkedIn. And one of the things I think you both have identified is this is not the time to start building your network, right? So, I mean, that doesn't help them now, but constantly, this advice I give to executives, I give to everything, that you should always be cultivating that next layer up. But here's the good news. And the good news is the past network you have is not going to restrict your ability to reach a new network on LinkedIn. It's not like you need to go clean out your connection list, because LinkedIn's all about relevance, and relevance oftentimes has to do with recency. Recency, if you can use that word. Yeah. How recent have you been engaging? So for those who are looking to build that network, there's a couple of things they can do. The number one answer I'm going to give, comment. Go find the audience they want to be influential in. Go find the contacts and start commenting on their content. They don't know them, but they know who the buyer is, right?
Yeah.
Because it's in the database, it's in the CRM.
Sure.
So they go find that person, and now they start adding to that person's conversation about what that person finds interesting.
Right.
The last thing they want to do is turn that conversation towards them. We call this the give before asking. Before you're going to ask for a meeting, a phone call, an in-mail connection, a connection request, don't ask for anything before you have given something to these new buyers.
So don't go out and spam them for a connection.
Well, no, and I think that's great advice. And the thing is, if you're coming out of this from either a technical or even a management consulting side, you can get that bit wrong, and you can put that ask in too early. And I always like the idea of don't ask right away. Lee had said earlier, maybe 12 touches, it might be 10, but it's going to be something like that. In fact, my favorite time is to do it when they ask. Wait a second, who are you in this conversation? What I love about your technique, Richard, is this is like, I just got access to a cat that I would never bump into in the hallway. Absolutely. He would never take my phone call, but he's on LinkedIn, and I've begun a conversation with him, which is what LinkedIn wants, what I want, and maybe what he wants.
He puts content on LinkedIn hoping no one sees it. Right? But if you go look at these buyers, their content probably has great job, thanks for sharing, or a bunch of likes. Nobody is actually engaged with their content in a meaningful way that makes them feel that their content contribution was valuable. Right. So these junior people have now moved up, have an open door invitation to go participate in conversations that are interesting to that individual.
That's awesome.
Do that for a little while, and now the individual will find them interesting. And when the connection requests feel like maybe they're going to reach out and do that connection request. Also, go comment on the content from those senior buyers and partners that you have just replaced, because they have a network that will self-reference back to you. Go leave a comment, they comment back. There's a good chance that comment and your conversations can be put in front of that buyer because they probably have a connection on LinkedIn. So you don't have to go directly at the individual. That's my second piece of advice. Go to their ancillary network and participate in those conversations. Don't ask them for something, meaning don't create a post where you tag them specifically and say, hey, what do you think?
Or my company does this.
Yeah, don't.
Those are the bad ways.
Don't do that. Find that way to ease yourself into that conversation, get them to know who you are. And then at some point after you've given to this relationship, they'll feel obligated in a very...
Well, they'll be curious, right? I mean, they'll absolutely be curious. And that's what you want to do in your side of this, is to create the question in their mind. Who is this person?
Absolutely. Yeah. And the good news to say is you don't have to purge your old network to immediately. And when I say immediately, 1 week. Right. All you take is 1 week of leaving those comments, and you'll see a 300 to 500% jump in the number of those prospects looking at your profile.
How many comments?
3 comments a day is what we recommend. How many comments on the individual or in general?
In general.
3 comments a day.
Yeah.
Now, why do I say 3? Because you'll do 3.
Yeah.
But if you're asking me, 10 comments a day.
Gotcha. All right.
But you're not going to do 10 comments. So I'm just like, okay, can I get you to do 3?
3 is a win.
What if I, I want to demonstrate my bona fides, right, to these guys that I want to have become my buyers, right? Do I post original content? Do I post my perspective?
You can post content, but don't get carried away with it. Once or twice a week, max. And it doesn't have to be this manifesto. Phil, I like what you said. Pick one thing to talk about that you think they'll find interesting, and then talk about it. But don't do it just once. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Every week, put out a piece of content. Keep doing it. And after a while, the curiosity will kick in, because when you're commenting on their content, they're going to start to see your content as well. And then like, oh, yeah, I kind of know that person.
Great.
And it's just one more step. So don't give up hope. It's pretty straightforward, but it seems almost too simple to do, but just simply go do it.
Love it. Thanks, Richard. Really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure to be here.
Thanks. Bliss Point Consulting, blisspoint.com.
It's blisspointconsult.com or therichardbliss.com.
The Richard, like and subscribe.
Therichardbliss.com. There we go.
All right. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, Richard.
Yeah.